let's go ahead.
So this is thank you guys for getting up and tuning in and listening to Daryl and I talk about some of the things I think are really, really passionate aspects of our life. Daryl and I think we're both fortunate enough to be able to play sports in high school and then carry that on through into college. And Daryl actually took it a step further and played professionally, played arena football for I think almost a decade. I think if you had asked us along the way what has shaped who we are, life decisions that we've made, careers that we've gotten into, I think without question, coaches would be on that list of people that have shaped and formed the decisions that we have made. And one of the things I think that we both realized as our kids came of age and started to play the sports that we played, there was this desire to give back. There was this desire to sort of get involved, not just to be part of, your child's life and the activities that they're doing, but there was a real belief that you could help shape and structure and give direction to younger kids that were starting to grow up and teach them not only the great aspects of playing sports, but in many cases, how to be a great person, how to be a really wonderful contributing part of society. So I think, for me, I've coached now just over 7 years. Daryl, I think you're longer than that. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm upwards of 20 years now.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm old.
I think one of the things that we want to do, we kind of put this list together, but the most interesting part of this was actually driven by Shelly at one point, where she was like, look, you guys often do trainings. You've got these anecdotes from coaching and bring them in. They're really good. Have you guys ever thought about showing a correlation between all of the things that you talk about to your teams and what it means to work, what it means to life, what it means to business? And I think this is the first time that Daryl and I have ever had a conversation that's gotten more in depth than sort of one-offs where I've gone to him and said, hey, here's some challenges that we face every day. What do you guys do? And then listen to some of the things that he's done over his years as coaching. Want to give you guys just a little bit of the format. This is very, very informal for us. This is going to be really a conversation kind of between Daryl and I, and kind of espousing what we have always believed to be the most important aspects, really, to creating a winning environment, a winning mindset, and really getting to the crux of whatever issues are in front of you and how to get through those. Daryl, anything you want to add before we get started?
Just one thing, I think Matt and I are coming from obviously the sports aspect, but I think anything that we talk about today, it doesn't have to be a sport. It could be, you were in the choir, you were at the band, you were in the drama club, doing, theater stuff. Everything is about how we work as teams and how coaches and our mentors in those activities are really going to help us in the business world as well. So I think you can take anything we say and really expand it to any one of those categories that you find yourself working in more.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think in any one of those environments, it's just a microcosm of life, right? It's just a really condensed, intense form of the things that we all deal with every day. So with that, I'm going to get us started here on our top takeaways. Daryl and I kind of shared these ideas back and forth. I had sent him some, he sent me some. So we're gonna go back and forth through this PowerPoint. Well, it's PowerPoint, really, it's a list. But the one thing that has always stood out to me, and this is when the boys come into the program and they are sort of wide-eyed and excited about being there, it's really, really interesting, certainly at the high school level, where you've got freshmen that are coming in and just starting to mature, and a bunch of seniors and varsity players who look like grown men to these guys. And it is overwhelming for those younger guys coming in to see, that they're on the field with what almost appears to be adults. And this is usually where we take them aside and say, look, we're going to start working on a winning mindset right now. Everything that you do when you come to this field is going to be structured around developing a winning mindset. And for us, we believe in a couple of things. One is average people don't win all the time. Average people may win sometimes, but they don't win all the time. We want you to start having the mentality that every time you're here, you're going to win. We should never, ever be surprised on the victories that we have. We should act as if we've been there before. But we want to make sure that when you show up every day, your mind is right. And that's the one thing that you can control that nobody else can control. right? We can't control the opponent. We can't control the plays they run. We can't control the weather. We can't control the places that we play. But what we can absolutely control every time we set on that field, every time we step into practice, is how focused we are, how driven we are, how much we want to support the players around us to make sure that we're going towards a common goal. So from the very, very beginning, where we talk to everybody that comes into the program, is your mindset is what's going to make this program work. Your mindset is what's going to create a winning environment. Your mindset is what's going to create a winner in you. Daryl, anything on that?
Oh, that's awesome. I think that, for all of us, it's just, how do you get up every day? Where's your mindset every morning as you get up and go to work? Whether you're going to a listing appointment, dealing with a buyer, dealing with a troubled escrow, where are you at in your mindset every single morning? So I think that's a great point. I'll go to the next thing that Matt and I, had talked about. And again, some of these were things we both shared, and some were like mine, some were his, and we kind of just tossed them up here. Next thing after mindset that I had is this concept of, are you all in? Many of you have heard this before, this term all in. It's a poker term for a lot of you. It's when the guy pushes all of his chips in and says, I'm all the way in there. But in today's world, what we've seen with at least with high school sports, and I think this plays over into your world as well, is that this all in mentality has gotten a roadblock to it. And it comes from social media and parents and things like that. And I'll tell you a story. A couple of years ago, we had a team. My son was a sophomore at the time, and we had a team that we felt was phenomenal, the varsity team, the seniors. And they were a group that we felt was going to go to the state championship. They were not playing all in. They weren't going after everything. They weren't flying around the ball. And after talking to some of them, you realized what was actually happening. What it was is they were afraid of making a fool of themselves. And so they would take a little bit off. They wouldn't run quite as hard because they were afraid somebody might fake them out. They wouldn't try to make a crazy catch because it might make them look funny. And I think when you look at society today, there's a section on ESPN that's called Getting Mossed. And so if those of you guys who know football, there's a guy named Randy Moss, who's one of the greatest wide receivers ever in the NFL. And Randy Moss would make people look like fools because he was tall, he was strong, he was fast, he would jump up above people and make these catches that nobody could make. And he would make people look foolish. So there's a segment on ESPN now where they pick out clips of people in college and the NFL who are really getting faked out or almost embarrassed. And they say, oh, you got mossed. Well, that's starting to happen on social media. And we saw it happening with kids in practice where another kid would say to one and say, hey, you just got mossed. When the kids got embarrassed. And instead of it being a funny thing, what happened is kids were holding back. They weren't going all in. And we kind of had a meeting, sort of a come to Jesus with our whole team and said, guys, you're not going all in. You're not doing anything. And they were talking about, they were afraid of getting embarrassed, of putting themselves out there. And I think that this concept of all in is the same in business as well. Like, we know there's so many things we're asking you guys to do. It could be video. Oh, I don't like the way I sound. I don't like the way I look. I don't want to go on video. Who cares? Go all in. I don't want to go out there and try to take that $1 million listing. I'm used to doing these $300,000, $400,000 listings. Who cares? Just go out and do it. You are in this business. You are getting in this thing to achieve at the highest level. And the only way you're going to do that is if you just push all your chips in and go all in. So that's number 2. Are you guys all in? Matt?
It's such a good point. It's funny because I realize that there's a certain decorum that we have when talking to, our business associates, when we're talking to agents. But it's funny, in that same, are you all in and getting, posterized, mossed, all of those things. When I would talk to the kids on the side where they were fantastic practice players that wouldn't always correlate to the game and they were holding themselves back. There was a little bit of this where we just say, hey, get over yourself. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, get over yourself, right? What happens? If you get embarrassed, you're going to be embarrassed for 15 seconds. The game's going to go on. Everybody will have forgotten, but you're going to sit there and dwell on it. Get over yourself, right? It's not that bad. You're going to find out the reasons how not to have that thing happen again. So I think in part of that, of being all in, is making sure that not every step you take is going to be the right step. You are going to have times where you stumble. It's how you recover from that matters. This moves right into, practice like you play. And I think the correlation for us, certainly as realtors, is there's always this understanding that we should have a great buyer presentation or a great listing presentation, and how we relate to our clients is going to be very, very important. But I would say that by and large, we aren't always practicing that. There are times where people have a listing presentation that goes sideways, and oftentimes they'll come out of this going, I don't know if my slides were right, or I had the right embossing on the folder on the outside. And sometimes it's as simple as, how hard have you practiced that presentation before you got in front of them? So we often work with the boys when they're out on the field, is we try to make our practices 2 times harder than anything they see in a game. We pitch from a closer distance. We hit ground balls harder than they would see in a game. We give them fly balls where they've got to cover huge amounts of ground, because if we can create an environment in practice that's harder than what they actually see in the game, by the time they get to the game, they come back and they're like, Coach, this is easy. This is easy. But if we run practices that make them feel really, really good about themselves, like, hey, here's a 20-mile-an-hour pitch, swing as hard as you can. Well, until we face a team that's going to throw 20 miles an hour, that's a useless drill for us, right? If we give them very, very easy plays, they get incredibly confident on very, very easy plays. The most important thing all of us can do is make sure that we create a practice environment, a training environment that is probably more challenging than what we would see in an actual environment, right? Once you've put all the hard questions in front of yourself that any seller could give you or any buyer could give you, and you've got great answers for those, by the time you get into the presentation, those questions may not even come up, but if they do, at least you're ready. So you have to practice like you play. And my encouragement would be, challenge yourself to a greater degree in an area of safety with friends, family members, whoever you can practice with, so that when you get to the real event, it feels like a walk in the park.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. Another analogy from our football team is every year we'd make the playoffs, and they allow you to bring the young kids up, the freshmen and sophomores, to join in practice. And it was amazing how the practice level went up that week. And you think, well, why would it go up if you're bringing the young kids? Because you're bringing these young kids up who now they have something to prove. And they're like, this is my shot to take on a varsity guy. Yeah. And our level of practice intensity always improved come playoff time. And people would always say that, we'd be looking okay in those last weeks of the season. And people will always say about our high school that they're a playoff team. We're a playoff team. And it was because of these number of kids that would raise the intensity level of practice once the playoffs started by coming up and saying, I'm going to challenge you guys. I'm going to take you on. So I think that's a great point, Matt. Next one up on here. This is something that's kind of tough in these days. Manage your emotions. Okay. The best players that I have played with or coached can manage their emotions. There's a great story about Joe Montana in a Super Bowl. I don't know the exact one. It was many, many years ago, where the Niners get the ball back. They're down. They have to drive, 80 yards for a touchdown. Everybody's obviously nervous. And he walks into the huddle, and the Super Bowl, has people everywhere. There's stars everywhere. And instead of, talking about the game or saying, hey, we really got to score and everybody's got to do their job, he looks up in the stands and he sees the actor, John Candy. And he points to him and he looks at the guys in the huddle and he goes, hey, guys, look, there's John Candy. And I mean, here you are at the highest point of stress and anxiety, the highest achievement in winning a Super Bowl, and you've got to drive down the field to win. And he relaxed everybody in that huddle in a minute just by pointing out somebody in the crowd. And it's one of those things, a lot of times people be like, hey, focus, make sure you're on the game. Like, that is the type of reason that Joe Montana was as great as he was, is because he took 10 other guys in that huddle and he got them all to chuckle a little, relax. And then, as many of you know, he drove them down the field, scored the winning touchdown, and they win the Super Bowl. That thing of managing your emotions, there is going to be tough times. Obviously, you're going to have bad escrows. You're going to have an agent on the other side that you don't like dealing with. You're going to have a buyer or seller, right? That calls you right away and says something that kind of fires you up. How do you manage your emotions, and how do you show it to others? I think that the big key here, and I don't mean by any means to be fake, but managing your emotions does not mean don't have emotions. It doesn't mean don't get upset, don't get mad. It means to just to press them down, quite honestly. I know a lot of people, well, why would you repress your emotions? Yes, in life, you don't want to be doing that your whole life, but it's basically being able to bottle that up and say, okay, I'm not going to deal with that right now. I'm not going to let my emotions get the best of me. I am going to deal with the topic at hand, and I'm going to take those emotions out of this equation. It doesn't mean you can't later, walk out, go outside, let out a scream, do whatever you need to do, meditate, but don't do it right there, right then. We always, one of the other analogies that we use in our game is, somebody's always going to take a shot at somebody in a game. And it's like, it always happens. The guy who turns and walks away, and then they flag the other kid, for a 15-yard penalty, and you look like the most calm, cool, collected person, and it's such a great thing for your team. But if you turn and you hit the guy back, it's always you that gets caught. Nobody else gets caught. And that's just the perfect example of just managing your emotions and how you have to do that in business and in life.
It's funny. Certainly for our leadership team, that they will have heard this a bunch of times, and I think your managers have probably said this to you at all. But I routinely told our leadership group, like, hey, you're going to have those days where things went sideways and things were really frustrating, but you need to be uplifting and motivating and calm in front of that group. And then if you want to come into my office and start kicking around chairs and flipping over tables, that's totally fine. Like, go do that in private with me over here. And I think, with our agent group the same way, like every once in a while, an agent just needs to come in and talk to their manager and go, look, I don't need you to solve anything. I just need to vent here for 5 minutes. So just listen to this so I don't go out there and vent on my clients. And I think that's a really, really healthy way of making sure that you can keep yourself composed really in the field of play, but give yourself the freedom to go, hey, this sucked. I'm really frustrated by this. I need to vent to somebody. I mean, having those outlets is so vitally important. So falling in love with the process. This is, oh, thank God my oldest son is not here to hear this one, because I have said this to him so many times, he'd probably just throw up right on the spot. Falling in love with the process is basically, it's all the little things that you do to become great. And I used to use this example with him all the time. There is a baseball player that he has not seen except for old YouTube clips, but it's a guy named Brooks Robinson, played third base for the Orioles. And there is arguably discussion that he's the best third baseman that has ever played. There's also arguably discussion that he is one of the best fielders to ever play. And I got in this conversation with a couple of kids, and they're like, man, he makes it look so easy. And I'm like, why do you think that is? And they're like, I don't know. It's just a gift, right? He's just smooth. He's just there. He puts in his work, and he just makes it look easy. Like, he never gets a bad hop. I'm like, really? You think he never gets a bad hop? Like, all the ground balls that come to him are perfect ground balls? And they're like, well, it just seems like that. And I'm like, here's what you don't know about Brooks Robinson. Outside of every practice that he did every day, at the end of his practices and prior to every game, he would take 300 ground balls at third base. 300 ground balls every day. And he got so good at it, it would take about 20 minutes to get through that. But his belief was, if I do the little stuff, if I just sit there and focus on the small things of getting better, if I do 300 ground balls more than anybody else, how good am I going to look at the end of the week? How good am I going to look at the end of the month? How easy is this game going to be at the end of the year? So falling in love with the process is it's doing the little things that make the big things easy, right? So making sure that, if you're, and this is a really, really overtly easy thing to show, but it's when you come in as a new agent and you're so excited to be in the business, and the first thing that you want to do is sit down with your manager and say, hey, let's go over these contracts. And your manager looks back at you and goes, hey, let's get a client. Right? Fall in love with the process. Start with these things in order. Make sure you're doing the little things that make that contract worthwhile.
Yeah, I think we all, it's that thing about the journey, right, is part of the process. It's getting, it's not just the destination. It's not just being there. It's, you know, what is that trip like? How does that 4 hour, you know, for us driving to Tahoe, right, from the Bay Area growing up, it's 4 hours. It's not just about getting there. It's about the drive there. It's about going through that time period. And the longer you have in between, you know, sometimes some of you've got 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Now we've been at home 40 days for some of us, right? It's like, oh, what am I doing there? What is that process? And for just getting us to, like Matt said, it's not just loving that process, it's trusting it. Do you trust that process? Do you trust that by doing those things every day, that the end game does come out? And I think that's the most important point. Once you trust the process, you can buy into doing it every single day because you know what the result is going to be in the end. Let me pull up number 6 here, huh? So locker room people are just as important as star players. You gotta be a locker room person to understand this, or at least be in a sport that has locker room people. But what this means, and you'll hear sometimes coaches of all sports will talk about this, which is that they're looking like the draft is coming up this week. And you hear John Lynch of the Niners, and he's talking about, we're looking for guys who do it the 49er way. And there's Chris Peterson used to coach University of Washington. He would call people my kind of guys. Okay, who are my kind of guys? And what they meant by that is they're not necessarily the fastest, the biggest, the strongest, the ones that can throw the farthest. They're what they call locker room guys. And a locker room person is that person who holds the team together. The person that makes everybody laugh, you know, in the locker room is playing funny jokes, but also gets everybody on the right mindset. When two players are fighting, they get them back together. They're the ones that say, you know, hey, let's go hang out at so-and-so's after practice, that kind of thing. And I bring that up. It's like, well, what does that have to do with business? We're all in a team, whether it's your assistant, your husband, your wife, your title rep, your mortgage loan officer. Somebody kind of keeps everybody together. They're the glue that holds everybody together. And so having locker room guys, and maybe you might be in your office, one of those locker room guys, the person in that office. You might look at yourself sometimes and go, you know, I don't have the most number of listings. Everybody else does that. But look at yourself. Maybe you have a different spot there in that office where you are the locker room type of person. You know, for us, and today, as some of you may or may not know, and there's a lot of it. Today's National Admin Day, right? Our locker room people are like Shelly and Melissa and Maria and Tatiana. It's, you know, Tiffy, all of our OAs, all of those people, Sierra and Adrian, and I'm going to be missing people like your TCs. We have such a great admin staff. Those are our locker room people. They're the ones that we can rally around and get us all together. And so I definitely want to shout out to all of them and say thank you to all of our admin today for just doing a phenomenal job. And if you guys have time today, please send a note to all of them as well and thank them.
You're such a thunder stealer. Like, I had that penciled in on my sheet at the end. You know, just to piggyback on that too. I mean, it's, two things. One, when we look at all of the services that are provided by our marketing group and our tech group, you know, Chris and Eric and Adrian, Sierra and Nia and our OAs, the thing that allows a lot of us to go out there and do the stuff on the front lines every day is because you have got this group behind you, supporting you, helping you, encouraging you, listening to you, helping modify things that you need to make you feel good. I think in the same way with this locker room mentality, there are times where I've taken people on our team that maybe have not had the most raw skill and talent as some of the other players. And there are times where we have had to cut people who were so toxic to the environment that even though they had a skill set that was really good, they were so detrimental to the team. I think you can't overlook the positive people that you surround yourself with, those people that are willing to work absolutely as hard as you're willing to work. If you find those people that, we had a guy kid who's 5 foot nothing, 100 nothing that we put on the team this year, because every day that he showed up to practice, he went 100% all the time. And he was showing other guys on the team who had been there for a while, like, you've got to give everything you've got all the time. And here's this guy that is sort of undersized, working harder than everybody else, and had the effect that by the time he started to crack the starting lineup for us, people were galvanized around his work ethic, and it absolutely changed the mentality of the team. I think it's an often overlooked arrangement, having key locker room people. But I think if you are surrounding yourself with the right people every day, it just takes you to new heights. It's a fantastic thing to have. Sometimes less is more. This is one of my favorites. I think, I don't know on the football side, but I've got to believe it's very similar. So baseball has, over the last 5 years, gone into this heavy data analytics process of examining everything that you do on the field. Your swing now is broken down into 100 frames per second. We're looking at launch angle, exit velocity. We're looking at your attack angle. All of these things that when we start working with the kids, we can very easily show these videos and go, hey, here's where you're missing. Here's what you need to do. And oh, by the way, we're trying to get 12-degree launch angle. And you can see some of these kids just glazing over. Like a 12-degree launch angle to a 15-year-old, it's like, what? Every once in a while, we just have to come back to those kids and say, hey, look, here's what I want you to do. When that pitch comes, I just want you to see it all the way to your bat. Just see it. I don't want you to do anything else. Be an athlete, see the ball, go get it. I think for us in work, every once in a while we get to this point where we're trying to have the perfect script, or we're trying to make sure that we've got the perfect rebuttal to any sort of takeaway that a client may give us, or we're looking for the perfect marketing material. Every once in a while, it's just you that's enough. It's you picking up the phone and having a regular conversation. It's you being able to engage in your clients on a real level. It's not how glossy your flyers were, and it's not how amazing your rebuttals were. Sometimes it's just you being a human in front of the other person. And I think every once in a while, we complicate things to such a degree that it stops us from being great. So every once in a while, just take a step back and look at the fact that I may not have to do anything more than these one or two key things to be really, really great at what I'm doing. I certainly see that in a performance standpoint, that if we've got kids that are thinking about too much, it affects how they play. Kids that get a really clear mind, get confidence, and focus on one or two things, end up having fantastic seasons.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest ones out there right now, Matt. And it's, I always tell people, and it's a funny thing because people are always surprised when I say this. As Matt said, I played in high school, and then I played in college, and then I played several years professionally in the Arena League. And I'll make this comment, and this is 100% accurate. I say I never had as much fun playing football as I did when I was in high school. And people, what do you mean? You played in college? You played in front of 85,000 people. You played, played against some of the best players that played in the NFL. I watched Marshall Faulk, right? I played against Marshall Faulk, one of the greatest running backs ever to play in the NFL. High school, by far 5, 6, 7 times more fun. And the reason it is because it wasn't so analytical. We didn't study film all day long. We didn't practice so much and show every single footstep. We just went out on Friday night as a 16, 17-year-old kid and had fun. And we just opened up and had a blast. And there wasn't as much thinking. We just went and did it. And, as Matt said, from a business standpoint, it's allowing you guys just to do it. Just don't worry about all that stuff sometimes. Just go out there and talk on the phone to somebody. Wing it, quite honestly. Most of you are much better than you actually think you are, and you're overthinking it, or you're getting too formal when you do it. And, outside of the business side, because I know we've got, looks like 153 people in here, and a lot of you have kids that are going through it. As my own little soapbox there, as a coach, coming from coaches here, I know Matt's dealing with this as well, is let them have fun. College will be a job. Adulting stinks, right? I mean, let's all be honest. They have plenty of time to be an adult later. Don't hyper analyze their games and what they're doing, whether it's music or drama or sports or whatever. let them go play, have a blast. When they come off the field, tell them great job. Let everything else handle itself. There'll be plenty of time to hyperanalyze that stuff at a different point.
I mean, Jared, how many times have you had guys? I mean, certainly as somebody that has coached linebackers, and certainly, I mean, your son was linebacker as well. You know, I think you may have had a position change here in college. But how many times with those guys do you just say, "Hey, go be an athlete," right? Just go be an athlete. Like, clear your head, just go play. Because really, I mean, I try not to say this to the guys as much as I can, but certainly sports like baseball is so predicated on failure, right? It is the most self-esteem crushing sport that I know, because you can fail 7 out of 10 times and you're on your way to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
That is crazy. And here's the thing, games have a very, very amazing way of self-correcting, right? All the coaching, all the analytics, everything that's there, they will pick up more from their wins and failures in a game than anything that we coach. And that's always the way it's going to be. And I think that's the same thing for you guys in work. We can always work together on scripts, dialogues, great presentations, ways to market, ways to lead gen. You will learn so much more just going out and doing than anything that we can do to coach you inside.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up we got, so a prevent defense only prevents you from winning. My football people will know this one well, although it happens in other sports as well. So what does that mean? A prevent defense only prevents you from winning. There is a philosophy that when in any sport, but it kind of came about in football, is that when you're ahead, when you're winning by a certain number of points and there's only a certain amount of time left, you put your defense into what's called a prevent defense. And what it means is we're going to prevent them from getting big plays. We're going to prevent them from scoring, okay? But it's not your normal defense. And the reason that you do it is because if you play really tight, aggressive defense, they might get behind you and win. They might get a big touchdown. So you give them a lot of room, and you give up a 10-yard pass. You give up a 15-yard pass, but you don't give up the big one. And so you're really just playing it very safe. And any of you have watched a game and know this, you know that then you start getting nervous, because inevitably every time that the other team moves the ball right down the field, scores immediately, and you're right back, out of the game again. And so we always say, why wouldn't you just keep playing what got you there? Why wouldn't you keep doing what got you there? And it's because people get scared. They get nervous. And they say, I want to just play not to lose. And there really is a difference between playing not to lose and playing to win. Okay? Getting aggressive. And a lot of this goes back to, the first thing we said, the all in. You can't play not to lose. You have to be in it to win it. You have to just say, hey, listen, I'm going to stay aggressive. I'm going to keep going after this. I am going to do the things that got me here in the middle. And then I'm looking at Michelle's. Yes, exactly. When you use Marshawn Lynch, you're pounding the rock every play, and then you decide, you know what, there's 2 yards to go. Let's throw a quick slant pass, right? I mean, come on. Just pound the rock, right? The beast mode. Those of you guys who are Seahawks or Marshawn Lynch fans, you know what I'm talking about. So it's really about, think about what did it for you. Think about what got you there, and why change at the final second. Why let somebody scare you off your game plan? If you know it works, if it's got you to this point, finish it. Finish it with the way you got there.
I think it's I love the Marshawn Lynch line every time. I go back to that, and it just creates all sorts of anxiety and stress in me every time I see them passing the ball when they're at the 2. I think there's a really interesting part here for me on getting fractionally better. There's an expectation. I talked a little bit about it when our guys come in, certainly our young guys, when they come in and they see these varsity players who look like grown men out there, and then they start comparing themselves to those players. And even worse, like certainly in this age of social media, things that get posted on Instagram regularly, things that they see on TikTok, videos that they can access regularly. We've got really young guys that come in and start to ask, why am I not there already? Why am I not making plays like those people are making plays? So I see this varsity guy over here. Why am I not throwing as hard as he's throwing? And I always tell them, I'm like, look, when you see those videos on Instagram and you see those videos that come up on TikTok, the reason they're up and getting the views that they're getting is because that was an incredibly special, almost abnormal play that was there. But here's the other thing. The practice scenarios, you don't know how many clips that person took. It might have been 100 attempts to get that one that they post up, and it looks like they just did this on their own. And this, I borrowed this from a guy named John Wellborn, who was an NFL athlete for 10, 11 years. He now runs this kind of fitness training program. But he said, look, every day, your job is to take this huge pile of dirt that's over here and move it over here. That's your job, right? That's what you're going to do. But here's the thing. Sometimes you show up and you've got a shovel and you're moving dirt like crazy. And some days you show up and you've got a spoon and it's taken a long time, but you're still moving the dirt. So honestly, when we try to get fractionally better, when I talk to the guys, I'm like, look, I don't need you 10% better today. I need you 0.5% better today. I need you 0.5% better today than you were yesterday. Because the aggregate total there of 0.5% per day, hey, that's 3.5% better at the end of the week, right? I mean, that's good. And if you aggregate that over the year, that's really, really impressive. For you as agents, I think the hardest thing to do is, certainly if you're somebody that has done, let's say you did 5 transactions last year, but you look at somebody else in your office and they did 40, right? You've got to look and see all the things that they did prior to that, all the ways that they got fractionally better each day, because you don't just stumble into 40 transactions. It's the amount of effort, work, timing, planning, preparation, failure that gets you to that spot. So if you're at a spot where you're looking at somebody who's producing the way you want to produce, have a conversation with them. What did they do to get fractionally better each day? And have a conversation with yourself. At the end of the day, when you look back, go, did I do enough to get a little bit better today than I did the day before? Because that's progress. That's what keeps you focused, and that's what matters.
Oh yeah, there's it's interesting. They talk about, for you guys, you look at what is that thing that you do, and I'm going to jump right to the next one because it piggybacks on what Matt's saying. So tell me though, Matt, before I jump in, what is that threshold of belief when you talk about getting better? I mean, what about a player is like, and this could be for an agent or for a player. They come in, hey, I want to play in the NFL, and you're looking at them and they're 5'8" and they're 140 pounds. It's not much different from an agent who did 4 deals last year and they said, I want to do $1 million this year in sales. What does that look like?
Yeah, I think the great term here that this the threshold of belief, and this is something. It took me a little bit, because you want to set targets for people where they really, really want to strive to go and hit it. And often when you're setting targets, sometimes that we know, hey, that is such a stretch goal. I don't know if this particular player can actually get there, but if he's focused on doing that, he's going to get better all the time. But you do get to this threshold of belief where you say, look, I need you to be 50% better by the end of the month, right? Take everything you've got now. I want you 50% better. You are going to, and this actually, I think this is illustrated most when, I forgot who it was. It was Phil Jackson when he was with the Lakers and they had made it to the championship and they lost. And he had started off the next season going, guys, I know you were great, but we need to be 25% better than we were. And you've got a locker room of the very best, most gifted athletes in the world going, 25% better. Like, how are we going to get 25% better? We got to the championship round. We lost in the championship round, but we gave everything we had. So he went past that threshold of belief. He lost the players for a moment on that and was really, really, confused as to why that wasn't motivating. And I believe his conversation was, I think he was with Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins is like, look, you went so far beyond what these guys could comprehend in terms of getting better that you lost them. You absolutely lost them. But here's the thing. If you go back in that locker room and you tell them, look, we did the best we can. I don't know if we can get better. You guys are all amazing athletes. So let's just go out there, play, have fun, make sure that we just put our best foot forward. Well, for that group in the locker room, They all sat there and go, wait, that's not our best foot forward. No, we still have room. We can still get better. He allowed that group to figure out that they did have a little bit extra. It wasn't 25%. It might have been 5%, but they won the championship that year. And all that took place was setting a goal that was not past their threshold of belief, believing that they had a little bit more in the tank. They had a little bit extra that they could do to make sure that the goal they had in mind was actually accomplished.
Absolutely. So part of that, getting that 1%, 0.5% better, for us, what we call as EDDs, it's your everyday drills. And is we open up practice every single day, that each individual coach has their own individual time. So kids all get together and stretch, and then they break out to their positions. So I would take all the defensive backs, and we do EDDs for roughly 10 to 15 minutes every day. And I've had to get to the point to announce to them at the beginning of the season to sort of preface, hey, guess what, guys? This 10 to 12 minutes is going to be identical every single day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, then we play on Friday. And then next week, we're going to do the exact same thing, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Don't ask me why we keep doing the same thing every day. And don't say, this is boring, can't we do something different? That's the whole point of an everyday drill. It's something you do every day. And in this time frame, especially with kids, and I think that as adults, we're just as much to blame about this, is this, instant gratification, and we can get on our phone and check anything and look at anything, and we're always looking, I want something that's more exciting. I want something that's different. I don't want something that's boring. And sometimes doing the work is boring. It really is. That everyday thing, calling your database, cleaning it up, making these simple calls, it can be extremely boring. So I'm not trying to, sugarcoat it and say it's awesome. But if we're trying to find the exciting things to do, then we're probably not going to get that 0.5% better. Every one of us has an EDD, an everyday drill. What is that thing that you should do? What are those 5 things? And you're willing to do it over and over and over again. There is just volumes of studies about this. Michelle I was just about to talk about it too. Michelle just posted about 10,000 hours. Malcolm Gladwell wrote a book on that basically, when they studied people who became experts in things, that they had put in on average 10,000 hours into that thing. You're like, well, how did I do that? You're doing that. If you're playing a guitar, it's because you played guitar for 3 hours a day, 7 days a week for 16 years, right? Once you hit the 10,000 hour range is where you start getting better at it. And the only way to do it is do that boring stuff each and every time. And so for us, we call it EDDs, everyday drills. I would ask you guys, figure out what are the 5 things you can do every single morning that are your everyday things in real estate, in your life, whatever it is, that you can look back and go, I put in 10,000 hours. Now I'm an expert at that thing. I think that's something we all have to look at.
It's such a good point. I mean, the amount of times that we have our guys come up and they're like, oh my God, we're doing ground ball drills again. Oh my God, we're doing base running again. And I look at them, I'm like, what do you think they're doing at the major league level right now? They're doing ground balls. They're doing base running drills. This never goes away, right? This foundation that you set for yourself, it's something that supports the rest of what you do. It's what allows you to be great. As soon as you know that, hey, this foundational element of my business or this foundational element of my skill set, I work on this every day so that I don't have to think about it when it comes to game time, right? It just happens. So I would say that there's doing your everyday drills can also be, the way you start your day. Do you get up, you work out, do, if you're into these sorts of things, you write your gratitude moments, anything that you do habitually that makes you better every day, make sure that really does become a habit, right? Those everyday drills, as soon as you incorporate those into your life, boy, things get a lot easier. The day gets a lot better. It's one of those things that I think we always overlook the grunt work, and sometimes it's the grunt work that makes you great. This is my favorite. Don't complain, be better. So this is, I think, anybody that has kids that have played on teams, anybody that currently has kids that are involved in sports, the age of helicopter parenting is absolutely there. And I will often have conversations with parents where they go, hey, young Johnny is complaining to me that he's not getting any game reps. And I always have to ask them right there, I'm like, how honest do you want me to be? And they always say they want me to be very honest, and then I am, and then they always are like, oh, that was maybe too honest. But here's what happens. As we assess talent level and skill that's out there, we are looking for players that are practicing at a level that make it impossible for me not to put them in the starting lineup. And if they're not in the starting lineup, it's because you haven't shown me that, right? There's something that hasn't taken place yet for me to go, hey, I absolutely need to start looking at this guy. And sometimes we are looking at you and you're just a little bit away from where we want, but we love what you're doing. And our job as coaches is to actually pull you aside every once in a while and go, hey, I see the effort that's there. Keep doing this, right? You're close. I think the correlation here for don't complain, be better. Never be jealous of somebody else's success. If there's an agent in your office that you're like, oh my God, first of all, I'm 10 times smarter than they are, and they're doing 3 times the amount of business I am. I don't get it. This sucks. What is it? There's so much of what we do that takes place when we look at ourselves in the mirror. What am I doing? Am I doing everything that it takes to be as successful as I want? Because there are some really, really interesting things that take place when we start to not hit the goals that we want to hit. There's self-sabotage that takes place. There's people that will actually think about hitting a certain level of success, and it worries them. How can I deal with that? What if I end up with 15 buyer clients and 7 listings at the same time? I'm going to fall down. Well, it's a problem they haven't had yet, but they're already starting to worry about it. I think that when you get to a spot of, am I going the direction that I want to go? Am I having the success that I want to have? If the answer is no, don't complain about it. Figure out what it is that you need to do that's going to push you down that path of where you really want to go. And I've seen in the chats a lot of time where people have brought up like, hey, what's your why? What's your direction? It's almost overused. What's your why? But there's real value in that conversation. Why you get up every day, why you work, why you chose the job, who are the clients that you choose to work with. All of these things matter in your direction. So make sure that if we're not hitting the goals that we want to hit, it's probably not the person to the right or left of you. It's probably not something material. Look at yourself. Absolutely look at yourself and make sure that you're doing everything that you can to be better.
Yeah, I think, one thing to add to that, I'll put a bunch more at the end here in our last topic, but I think having somebody hold you accountable to not complain is a huge one too, because we actually get in a rut where we don't realize we're complaining. Some of us probably, there's a game that went around for a while there that you're supposed to wear a rubber band and shift it from your left to your right wrist all day long. Every time that you complain, you're like, shoot, and I got to take it off and put it on the other to try to keep you aware of it. But when that was going around, we noticed that people didn't realize they would complain and then not shift it because they actually got so used to complaining they didn't even know they were doing it. Or they do it by posting something, right? You post on Facebook and then that's not really a complaint. I'm just making a point here. And I would encourage you, find somebody you're around all the time, somebody who can watch your Facebook, somebody who can watch your Instagram, TikTok, whatever. It's hard to complain on TikTok, I guess. But find somebody who's around you enough and they can just tap you on the shoulder and just say, hey, that's kind of complaining right there, right? Anything you say, even just saying somebody else, I'm tired of hearing that person say that. Just really watching yourself that, I think you'll find that your whole day changes of how you do that and how you live your life. It's a huge one. Going back on there. So they have to play us. Some of you have actually done this I think I did this in a class in Roseville, and I can't take credit for this one. I've been blessed to coach in the last couple of years with a gentleman up here in Loomis. His name is Josh Perry. And some of you, if you're old NFL fans or Eagles fans, you'll remember Josh. Josh played fullback for the Philadelphia Eagles and was in the last time the Eagles were in the Super Bowl. Donovan McNabb was their quarterback, and Josh was the fullback. He played college at San Jose State, and really was a guy that nobody thought would make it in the NFL. He came as a linebacker, and he had to bounce around. He got cut. He got bounced around from different teams, and then finally found a spot with the Eagles. And actually, there's a kind of a lot of funny stories about Josh, but one of them is, Andy Reid, who is like one of the most respected coaches in the NFL. Josh wasn't sure, even when they were in the playoffs going towards the Super Bowl, and he was still the starter, he still wasn't sure he was going to be there because he had just been cut and let go so many times, and he was driving the most beat up car, and it was just the exhaust, everything was stinking up the parking lot. And Andy Reid actually went to him and said, dude, you need to buy a new car, okay? Like, you cannot bring that thing into this parking lot anymore. But Josh brought this term to our team and taught it to my son too, which is they have to play us. And he would get so emotional about it and literally scream at the kids about it in a good way, screaming, not, and it would be when they were overanalyzing, well, they're going to run this and they're going to run this offense. And how are we going to defend them against this? And how are they going to, and he would turn it around and he'd say, how are they going to defend our defense? How are they going to run that play against our defense? They have to play us. That's the challenge. They have to play us. Who cares that they got some new no-huddle offense? Who cares that they have the greatest wide receiver? They have to play us. And I think we do this in business a lot too, where, we're pointing at, number one, we point at other agents. Well, but they've got this, they did this, and they're really well known in that community, and they already know the main person at the head of the PTA, or that company has this technology and this thing, and theirs just looks better. And it's like, you have to do what you have to do with your team. You have to prepare with what you have. Stop worrying about everybody else and just worry about yourself, okay? They have to go against you, okay? Instead of competing with other agents, other companies, other things like that out there, okay? Look at it the other way. Look at it as they have to go against you. They have to do a listing presentation against you. They have to deal with your new videos that you're putting out there. They have to deal with all of the new technology your company is bringing. They have to deal with the fact that you've got your OA and they don't have anybody as great as them. They don't have a marketing department like Sierra and Adrian and Nia. They don't have any of that. So really start looking at yourself and praising what you have instead of looking at somebody else and trying to do that. Remember that each and every day. They have to play us.
It's such a great point. I love this one. We had, in a very similar scenario, guy on our team, great power hitter. We are in our playoffs, and the guy who's pitching is throwing gas. He's throwing hard, and I'm talking to him. He's on the on-deck circle, and he's like, "Coach, that guy's throwing really, really hard, man. He is really, really good." I'm like, "Hey, you know what that pitcher's thinking right now? Dude, I got to face this guy. I hope he doesn't hit me." Like, go up there, know that you are absolutely as intimidating to that guy as he is to you. And as long as you can keep that mindset right, doors just open up.
Yep.
All right. Next one is, this is a tough one, but I think here the correlation is this. Every day you're either trying to take someone's job or someone's trying to take yours. This is something that we put out there and we preach to the guys all the time, because as a freshman, sophomore coming in, you are looking at varsity guys and you're trying to take their spots. Those varsity guys are absolutely doing everything that they can to make sure that they retain those spots and don't lose it to somebody else. The idea with this is, how do you stay hungry every day? How do you make sure that you are motivated every day? And I think for sports, it's very easy to say, hey, you want to be in the starting lineup and somebody else also wants to be in the starting lineup. So what are you doing to make sure that you secure that job? I think for us as independent contractors, it can be really, really challenging to stay up, to stay motivated, to stay focused all the time. But if you think about it in this way, that somebody is actively trying to take your job, think about somebody who's actively trying to address your clients, or work in your geographic farm, or is out there lead generating when you're not. I think if you always can work with the mindset is, what is that person doing over there that I'm not doing? It will keep you focused. It'll keep you moving. It'll keep you hungry. it also allows a lot of self-exploration too, to make sure that I'm doing everything that I need to do to make sure that I retain the people that are closest to me. That database that I've put together matters. Those people want to hear from you. They want to make sure that they are in partnership with somebody that cares about them. Never, ever get complacent. It's the worst thing in the world. It is one of those things that I think, yeah, God, I've used this so many times. I think people often sit on this continuum of pain and pleasure, and we try to put ourselves somewhere in the middle. Sometimes we slide to discomfort and we try to get out of it. Sometimes we get really, really comfortable and we get complacent. The more that we can push ourselves to stay out of that middle zone, the better and more fulfilling your life is going to be. And I mean that from a work standpoint. I mean that from a personal standpoint. And for those that are competitive in anything, that absolutely matters. If you can somehow figure out a way to keep yourself motivated every day in some form or fashion, that's what that means. The every day somebody's trying to take your job, or you should be trying to take theirs. Make sure that you're focused on the stuff that's right in front of you. Don't get complacent.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, again, I keep harping on the social media thing. I've said to many of you, if you've got a CRM, if you've got your database and you are not calling them, they are getting peppered on social media every day. And if you don't go after them, somebody is. If you don't talk to your database, somebody's going to. So you got to stay focused on that. Absolutely. So know your role and embrace it. Sometimes we know our role and we don't embrace it. Sometimes we don't even have any idea what our role is, or we're in the wrong spot. We don't realize that we don't know our role. And what that means to me is, first, again, from the sports analogy, is we don't always like our role. Everybody, when we have tryouts, and I know Matt does the same with baseball, but first day of tryouts, you got junior kids. This is like back in the, 4th and 5th grade time. And we would always say, okay, who wants to be a wide receiver and the line up over there? And who wants to be a quarterback and line up over there? Who wants to be the lineman? Well, we get 40 kids out there. We usually end up with 21 quarterbacks, 19 wide receivers and 1 lineman. And we're like, okay, guys, we can't field the team this way, right? Everybody thinks they're a quarterback. Everybody thinks there's a receiver because they want to touch the ball. They want to score. They want to throw the ball. They want to be the guy that, is up in front and everybody's lifting up on their shoulders. And nobody wants to be the lineman who's in the trenches, who nobody hears their name called or anything like that. And then what we do is we kind of go down the line and we reproportion where everybody's at and say, okay, you're not really a receiver. You're more of a lineman. And we move certain people this way and that way. And inevitably, feelings are hurt. And then what happens, though, is people start to realize their role. And there's nothing like watching a kid on a high school team embrace their role and realize, this is my job. My job is just to do this and do it really well. And I may not get my name called over the loudspeaker, but I am going to be the reason this team wins. And there's some amazing stories. One of the best ones about it I always think of is the long snapper. So those of you guys who don't know what a long snapper is, the person in football who snaps the ball to the punter or the kicker. And they're not the normal center. They're not the normal person who plays the whole game. In fact, that's the only thing they do. They come in maybe 3 or 4 plays a game, snap the ball, and that's it. And there are guys now in the NFL that have made their entire living out of just being a long snapper. So every day they come to practice, they practice a bunch of snaps, they go in for 4 plays in the game, and that is it. It's actually one of the safest, best roles out there because they never get hit, because there's actually a rule in the NFL that guy, you can't hit him because his head is down while he's snapping the ball. You have to let him hit and wait for his head to come up. And a good long snapper, a person who knows that role, can make $500,000 to $750,000 a year in the NFL. And they can play for 10, 12, 13 years. They don't have to be great at all the other stuff. So I bring that up because sometimes you have to look at your role and go, am I avoiding where life is trying to put me? Where it's trying to, it keeps opening a door for you and saying, this is your role, but you want this other role. You want something that maybe seems glamorous, seems a little bit more fancy. Maybe it's more money, whatever it is. and you're just ignoring the fact that whatever you want to call it, life, karma, whatever it is, keeps shutting certain doors and opening other doors and giving you the role that's supposed to be yours. And so I'd ask you, step back today, look at what is your role supposed to be? What are you really supposed to be doing? Why is that important? And then once you figured it out, embrace it, and you will take off. It's one of the most freeing experiences ever, is to find out what your role is and just embrace it.
That's awesome. Hey, I was gonna address something here. So when you're talking, I get to read some of the chat. So I just saw Rains on the, I don't like the mindset of someone is trying to take your job or you're trying to take theirs. Fair enough. I think that what you've got to take from the things that Daryl and I are putting out there is how to take these concepts that we use on a field where it's just true. Someone is either trying to take your spot or you're trying to get into that starting lineup. It's there. But look at how this pulls out into what you do. So my biggest point on that line right there is just don't get complacent, right? Is to make sure that you are focusing every day on how to be the best so that you are top of mind with all of your clients, that you've got these raving fans that talk about how amazing Rain Palmer is. So whatever you need to do to make sure that you don't get too comfortable, to make sure that you don't feel like I'm just going to put this on cruise control, my business works on its own. Make sure that you go in there with some sort of mindset that makes you never settle, right? Make sure that you're always hungry to go get something. So that's really the biggest part of that phrasing there. But again, we're using this in the context of how we coach our boys out there. Ray says, I'm never too comfortable. I believe that.
And I think, Rain, I think you brought up a great point, because, I used to think that way myself too, of like, I don't want to have to be, elbowing agents out of the deal and trying to push them this way or push them that way. And I understand the scarcity mindset. I kind of changed my mindset when it came to somebody's trying to take my job on that. And I still use what Matt's saying, but in a little different way. And I would say to Rain, here's the way I looked at it. We still, as an industry, I think everybody agreed, we don't have a great reputation. Okay. That's just the way it is, right? They think of us somewhere above used car salesmen. And that's our job, to try to raise that reputation. And there are, unfortunately, a lot of people out there that don't do a good job in real estate, and they don't take care of clients. They basically proliferate this bad reputation. So I looked at it this way. If I don't go and get that client, if I don't take that client and give them 5-star service, I'm responsible for somebody else getting them and giving them 1-star service and making them think that the real estate profession is not a great profession. So I looked at it as a competition. I have to prevent people from getting bad service by making sure that I give them my service. And that's what I try to do. And now, again, if you're up against another great person in a listing presentation, awesome. Now you feel happy whether you won or lost, because you know that they're getting that great service. So that's the way that I would look at that. Where were we at, Matt?
I think we're celebrate the effort. So I think this is one of these things that it took me a little bit to sort of move this direction of celebrating the effort and not the result, because I think we're often so driven by, did you win or lose? And certainly in baseball, is your batting average at a certain number? Did you contribute to the winning ways? We started to change that mentality completely, where we wouldn't even talk to our guys about what their batting average was. We could have a guy that went 0 for 4, but he hit 4 balls on the barrel, screaming line drives. They were just right at somebody. And we would acknowledge those guys after the game, like, you crushed the ball. It went right to somebody, but you crushed it. You did everything that you were supposed to do up there. Hey, this time it didn't work out, but it's gonna. We celebrate the guy who's up to bat and sees 8, 9, 10 pitches, is fouling them off, is fighting, is battling. Even if he grounds out to shortstop, but he sprinted as hard as he could to first base. That's one of those times where we go, the bench will get up and be celebrating that guy when he comes back, even though he made an out, because we got to see 8 or 9 extra pitches. We got to see a kid bust his hump down to first base, give absolute 100% effort. Those are the things that I think that make a really, really strong character person. I think at our biggest moments, we always want to look back and see, hey, what was the total number of transactions that I closed? But maybe we should be looking at how many people did I impact, right? How many clients that had bought and sold with me in the past that don't have any need to buy and sell right now, but maybe they needed some help. They needed a landscaper, or they just had questions about what they could do to upgrade their house. Maybe the efforts that we take on just being a really, really good agent is enough. Because I think if we focus on all the right activities, the results that we want will come. And I think the hard part is when we start going 100% results driven, we start to beat ourselves up because we didn't close 4 transactions this month, even though we wanted to. I would ask you to kind of look back at what you're doing and say, hey, did I do all the things that were necessary to put myself in a position that those things could have happened? Did I leave everything that I had out on the table there and expose myself in a way that was positive for everybody that was around me? Because again, I think if you put the right efforts out there, your results will come. And I think the reinforcement of doing the right things every day is far, far better than just, hey, what was the result at the end of the week?
Absolutely. So that brings us to our last point, and we're just about done here. The last thing I want to bring up and kind of send you guys off with is team is everything. No matter what, an individual is not bigger than the team. We know that. It's kind of a cliche that if you don't have the team working together, if you don't have everybody doing their job at the same time, that you're not going to be able to win. You're not going to be able to make things work. But it's about more than that. It's also about, the great thing that I've always loved about football was that it was this, microcosm of the world, of society. It was 11 guys in a huddle, and they were 11 guys that, quite honestly, had I not gone to college or played in the Arena League, I don't know that I would have had the opportunity to socialize or meet with these guys on such a regular basis each and every day, because we came from all walks of life. And unfortunately, in our world and stuff, whether it's socioeconomic status, where we live, the state we're in, just friends, things like that, what happens is we don't have the opportunity to get to know as many people. And I have friendships from those days in football that will always be there. Guys that, I'm happy that I was able to meet with and talk with. And I got to see so many different points of view that I don't believe I had when I was coming out of high school. Obviously came from a very middle class suburban neighborhood. And then I got to, travel all over, not only the United States, but the world, playing overseas as well. And got to meet so many different people and see how they look at stuff. And so, when I finish us up with this team is everything, I wanted, Matt and I's main goal today was to, get you guys uplifted, get you inspired, try to do as much COVID-free training as we could. But I do, and not that I want to end on a bad note, I want to end on a high note, but I do want to enter this COVID realm for a second here, and on the thought process of team is everything. There is, as many of you know right now, there is an effort to separate us all right now. We've had it out there for years, and now we're trying to separate by a pandemic on certain party lines, political lines. And I'm seeing it start to come out on Facebook and social media. And I know many of you have probably seen this diagram. It's like a Venn diagram that's out there right now. And I think it's one of the best ones, which basically shows that it's possible for somebody to be concerned about this virus and concerned that we should shelter. And it's also possible for that same person to be worried about our economy, worried about how we get out of this, and how long we can be shut down for. And that those two types of philosophies can coexist, that we can have both of those thoughts. There is not just everybody shelter in place and shut your door and don't ever come out, or the other one, which is everybody, let's go party and have a blast and, storm the beaches. So I'm just going to ask everybody, look at what you're posting, look at what you're reading, look at who you're talking to and what you're listening to, and realize there's never been a time that team is everything means as much as it means right now. Not just in our families, inside of this company as Better Homes and Gardens, in a country, in a state, in a county, team is everything. And you going back to everything on this list, don't complain, be better. Don't find ways to divide, find ways to unite. I think that would be the biggest thing that you can do, that you can add to this, that Matt and I can coach you to do, is to find ways to unite people, to understand that we are a team, and team is everything. Nothing takes precedence over the team. Matt, you got anything else on that?
I think that was great. I mean, the last thing I would say is that you know, it is our incredibly unique, beautiful, wonderful group that is going to get us through this, right? It's the fact that Daryl and I can't do this without you. We hope that you guys can't do it without each other. We're absolutely so impressed with how you guys have handled yourselves through an incredibly challenging time. And I know that coming out the other side, really, really special things are going to happen for this group. So just thank you guys so much for everything you do every day.
Absolutely. And thank you, Shelly, for putting this together and pushing Matt and I to do it. So you guys send her a note as well. Hope you guys have an awesome week. Thank you so much. We are having this recorded and we will send it out to everybody. So take care, everybody.
Take care, you guys.